So, good morning, Seattle.
Good morning.
All right, that was a reasonable facsimile of being awake. Good job, everyone. Let me get my clicker here. As Arpit said, I'm Heather Kirksey. I'm the VP of Community and Ecosystem for LF Networking, and joining me a little bit later on stage will be Rob High, the CTO of Edge and Networking at IBM. So, we are here to talk about the 5G Super Blueprint. It's an initiative that's been going on for some time, and we continue to make great strides in it, and it's a great way that brings together lots of commercial entities and open source projects. So what we are trying to do with the 5G Super Blueprint is, for one, showcase the innovation that all of these great projects are doing. There's a lot of technical work, a lot of great code being built, and we really want to show that end-to-end across the entirety of the Edge and networking portfolio here at the Linux Foundation. Second, in order to make it deployable and leverageable by the end users, really do some of that work around integration. Figuring out how these pieces fit together, figure out if we've got the right APIs, figure out how to build an integrated platform. And then once we have that end-to-end infrastructure, really focus on the network services that unlock real business value. You know, infrastructure is great. Infrastructure is the thing I love most in this world, but infrastructure is always in service of something else. It's in service of the business value and the impact on real people. So talking a little bit about that business value, one of the things obviously here in telecom that we've been focused on, is on 5G. We're now 5G's deployed in over 50% of networks. I remember at one point doing 5G Super Blueprint work where we couldn't get an enabled handset to flesh out our proof of concept, and to now see it have seen it grown this much and to be in this many networks is really exciting. We're expecting the worldwide subscriber base to 5G to be 4.4 billion by the end of 2027, and the just overall global impact, economic impact, to be over $7 trillion by the conclusion of this decade. And so this isn't just sort of a general worldwide sort of impact, it's also a great market for everyone who is building the pieces, the infrastructure, the hardware and software services that build it out. We're expecting that to be $131.4 billion by the end of this decade, so a very significant market out there. Now, as we move from 5G and start to think about, what are some of the ways that 5G can impact the world, we start talking about, something that's been a session track here this week, that's sort of Industry 4.0. So, when you take 5G out to that enterprise edge, out to industrial use cases, out to retail, out to telemedicine, government, a lot of the various types of end users you've been hearing about and hearing from, you begin to see even more value being unlocked, with $327 billion of value expected by also the end of this decade. So we've got some exciting and hard work ahead of us for the next couple years. So how does this relate back to 5G Super Blueprint? So we have been working on this, for some time in various iterations, starting back in the early days of OPNFV, going into our original Virtual Central Office demo, then at KubeCon in San Diego, demonstrating the first full 5G network built with cloud native open source. We've been working on this as we continue to both sort of extend the network, improve the capabilities of the network, and look at what that enables. And so we're here today, and the real thing is, this is real code, this is real. I might be showing you PowerPoint, a lot of PowerPoint today, but it's not just PowerPoint. It is the work of a lot of individuals to really make this happen. So as we start to think sort of about that, one of the big recent pushes has been to connect that 5G capability to that enterprise edge. When we first sort of created this original PowerPoint slide, this was a vision. And we're beginning to take that 5G, which we've been working on so much, into that enterprise edge with some communities who haven't always known each other or known exactly how we should work with each other. It's been a little bit, you're getting your 5G in my enterprise edge. No, you're getting your enterprise edge in my 5G. I did have Reese's peanut butter cups this morning for breakfast, but my questionable nutritional choices and metaphors aside, we really are beginning to take this to the far edge of the network and really unlocking more value. So to start talking about that, I would like to invite my co-presenter, Rob High, the CTO of Networking and Edge at IBM, to come talk about some of this more and eventually give us some insight into this video that's been playing.
Excellent. Thank you, Heather. All right. Thank you. All right, look, I think we all understand the importance of 5G. I think we all pretty much understand that 5G brings a disproportionate level of value to enterprise use cases as compared to how 3G and 4G and LTE brought value to the consumer marketplace. It's also important for us to understand that 5G is only part of the equation. We really need to think about how this maps into the value that enterprise organizations are trying to use. And as 5G continues to roll out, and especially private 5G, we have to understand that that's really kind of setting the stage for a future that when we combine that with edge computing, can lay the foundations for something really pretty substantial. And by the way, keep in mind that edge computing can be deployed even now, even as we're rolling out 5G using 4G and LTE technologies to begin with. So while 5G is clearly important, we have to understand that networking is not the end goal. The networking is a means to the end. Networking enables and unlocks the value that we're trying to deliver to customers and to businesses. At the same time, we have to recognize the growth that's also occurring in the world of edge computing. The number of devices, the number of gateways and servers and clusters that are now being deployed in locations where businesses conduct their business, where people actually perform work, where data about that work is being collected, where the decisions about that data and the insights that data produces can be made. And so when we think about that, we need to think about where is the value and where's the value being unlocked and what is it that businesses are looking for. They're not looking for delivering and deploying compute. They're not looking to deliver and deploy networking. They're looking to solve business problems for which compute and networking are instrumental in enabling. So let's go back to that video you may have seen and talk about that. This is just one example of how we can harness the benefits of edge computing and networking. And in this particular case, what you should be seeing is a visual analysis being performed on video data to recognize whether people are wearing their proper protective equipment, their personal protection equipment, PPE. You can imagine this being used in an industrial site. You can imagine it being used in a construction site. You could be used even in retail locations where it's important to ensure that people are wearing the proper PPE. Of course, there's other things we can imagine too, using very similar approaches. Again, perhaps using video analytics to recognize the quality of the work being produced on a production line, or the facilities that you're operating with and whether they're properly conditioned and have the equipment in place that you're supposed to have. Of course, you can also imagine the other forms of analytic being performed. If it's not visual analytic, it could be acoustic analytic. It could be simply taking the raw sensor data and using that to analyze the quality of the work that's being done or the processes that are being formed and how to optimize those to improve that productivity. We could also use it to monitor and manage assets, whether those are the assets that you find in a production and industrial situation or the assets that we use in other places of life. And I want to kind of show you another example of applying this combination of networking and edge computing in an industrial setting. Some of you may have seen the robotic quadruped that Boston Dynamics has created You may have seen YouTube videos of it dancing and prancing and doing all kinds of interesting acrobatic sorts of things. But in the real world, there's actually a very interesting utility that we can bring to the use of this quadruped in the process of doing facilities inspection. One of the things that we all have to do in our industrial environments is to ensure that fire extinguishers are properly mounted, that they are where they're expected to be, that they're properly charged, that there are no obstructions and obstacles in the way. And we can use, in this case, the compute on the back of Spot and the camera that Spot is bringing to these locations where fire extinguishers should be installed to examine for exactly those kinds of conditions. Using the local compute to do the video and analytic, and in doing so, reduce the amount of data that we have to transmit over the network. More importantly, reduce the risk of that video data containing images of people or production processes or inventory or things that businesses might consider to be confidential information they want to protect. If we can avoid transmitting that, we reduce the risk of it being intercepted, and so we do that processing right there on the backpack of Spot. And then we still transmit, though, the results, the inferences that came out of that, including, for example, in the case where the fire extinguisher does exist, but is being blocked, getting a work order submitted so that the people who need to go fix that can come out and remediate that situation. So this is just one small example, and again, you can imagine how we take this and adapt it to more and more variations of other things that need to be inspected. That could be inspecting for electrical problems in the industrial site. That could be recognized through the thermal output of transformers and electrical distribution panels may produce if there is an electrical problem. We could use it to recognize whether equipment is in the right locations that are expected. We talked a little bit about fire extinguishers, but of course there's lots of other kinds of equipment that need to be in place. You could use it to go examine inventory. You can use it to take an analog world of gauges and dials and convert that into a digital form by merely looking at the analog value on that dial and producing out of that the digital representation of that we can then use in other processes to automate those industrial environments. One more example is in the world of retail. Some of you may have seen the presentation that Mahesh Dadani and Sean Williams gave yesterday of the implementation that we've created of the Open Retail Reference Architecture, the ORA project, which is another LF Edge project, using it in a very similar way to do inspection to recognize whether people are wearing the proper equipment when they go into the stockroom or into the warehouse, to make sure that we don't have unauthorized people going into locations where they shouldn't be. But that could be also adapted to other things like how do you accelerate and provide better experiences for consumers in the retail location. If you want to learn more about this, there is a setup down in the PEDs downstairs that you're welcome to go down and check out and ask more about. But the opportunity to apply this technique using edge computing to do local inferencing, analytics, processing the data that's being collected in that environment, being able to produce inferences and insights that then can be used for decisions that need to be made in that environment, using wireless connectivity like 5G in particular, private 5G even more so, to communicate between these kinds of edge devices, whether they're on robotics or on fixed location compute capabilities, back to the cloud, back to the data center. These are the opportunities that I think that we have available to us, and it's not just about PowerPoint. It is about real code that's running today using, in fact, even more importantly, in my opinion, open source to do that with. All that together makes what we're doing real and something that we can begin to exercise now.
Well,
Heather?
Thank you so much. All right, and while we're talking about some thanks, I would be remiss if I did not pause here and thank our participants, right? Rob and I are up here speaking, but the work has been done by a number of organizations and people within them. So I first of all want to thank everyone on this list who has provided infrastructure, insight, code to open source projects, code to the integration work that we're doing in 5G Super Blueprint. There are 22 organizations on this slide. Where else besides in open source can you get 22 organizations coming together to collaborate on making something really extraordinary and really high value and high impact? So this is amazing. This is the power of what we do. This is the power of open source. And to take it a step beyond that, these are the folks that for this round of the proof of concept have put their blood, sweat, and tears into it. They've been on phone calls at annoying times of the day. They've found bugs. They've fixed bugs. They've created integrations. And not everyone was able to travel, but if you were on this list, stand up. I want everyone to see you, and I want everyone to give you a huge round of applause. So come on, stand up, be recognized. And I know some people weren't able to be in the room this morning, so if you see anyone who's on this list at all for the rest of the week, please make sure you give them your approbation, your appreciation, and your deep gratitude, because they're doing the work that makes this possible. They're doing the work that makes open source run and that makes all of these networking services actually happen in the real world. So that's what we've done to date. We've built out 5G networks using open source. We're now integrating with the edge. So what are we doing ahead? Because really, we don't rest. There's no rest for the deserving and people who've done a great job. Generally, you get more work, and this is no exception. So we're going to continue to innovate on the infrastructure side. There's work that we still need to do in terms of adding additional security to these networks that we're building in open source. Tom spoke very eloquently about that earlier. That's something that we are working on across the projects and within 5G Super Blueprint. Continue our ability to enhance slicing and to be able to offer really great private 5G opportunities that really unlock some of this edge potential for enterprises. And then we have lots of labs. Software is great, but you need infrastructure to run this software on. You need to do that to integrate. So we have labs, and I'd like to thank especially Kaloom, who has just let us know that they are going to be offering permanent lab space for us to continue this great work. So, continuing to innovate on the infrastructure and lab side, and then really taking that once again into real value by integration and collaboration. So there's a lot of work to do to deepen that. This morning, we've seen a taste of what happens when you bring in sort of the 5G capabilities, the network capabilities, the service management capabilities, and the edge technologies. And there's a lot of work to be done. We've got architecture from Open Retail. We've got architecture that we've been working on in LF networking. There's alignment to be deepened there. There's work across Nefio, one of our great new projects, and ONAP. There's been some great work going on between ORAN and ONAP through the SMO project. We've had a couple presentations on that this week. So just continuing those integrations so that this infrastructure really can be built, can be usable, can be unlocked by end users. And then finally, once again, the infrastructure, as you so well put, is in service to these use cases, in service to the value. We've seen a few this morning. There are ideas of how we can use this infrastructure to unlock new ones. As we have this infrastructure available, we want to demonstrate those use cases, go from individual CNFs to full-scale network services that really impact people at the edge and the way that they work. Increase worker safety, increase the availability of healthcare, improve productivity, improve quality, reduce waste. These things that really, really take us into making the world better. So continuing this virtuous circle of innovating, collaborating, integrating, iterating, continuing to make it better over time so that we end up with real value. And what I really want you to take away is that the 5G Super Blueprint is open for collaboration. You know, we saw the people who've gotten us to where we are right now. To get us further requires all of you. You are the people that make this happen. You are the people who will help us turn this into value. You are the people that will help us make the world better, to increase the safety, to make the world better, to make it livable, to make it great, and we do it through open source. So the Kaloom booth on the show floor has some information about the proof of concept you've seen today. As Rob mentioned, the LF Edge Pavilion has some demonstrations from some of the Edge projects. At 2 this afternoon, people who've worked on the 5G Super Blueprint will be available in the LFN Developer Lounge to really talk about that, answer more in-depth questions, and just please, everyone come join us because this is open source, making the world we want to live in. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.